Alright, so we're going to continue working on our dragon. And the way that we open him after, you may close ZBrush down is you just double click on the file. There are ways if you use Lightbox to go here and just kind of backtrack to get to it. But sometimes it just doesn't work because of how Windows names things. So it's fine just to double click that and it'll open up your stuff in ZBrush. Alright, so here's where we left off last time. I did go through and add in some finer details. Stop it there. So you can see how I have some scaling and I have some shapes right here. It's a little bit stretched right there on the neck, so that's no big deal. I can just go grab my standard brush, grab my drag rect, and go to my alpha again, and make sure I'm at a good Z intensity. And just drop in some shapes there just to, again, fill it in with something, because there's not really any like flat surfaces on our guy here. Alright, so there's the dragon. So I'm going to switch my subtool over to, let's do the teeth first. So I'm going to click on the teeth. And I'm just going to use my reordering just to get the teeth on the bottom. You probably don't have to do that, but in my case I do for whatever reason. My laptop is acting funny. Alright, so now for the teeth, you can see where the teeth are at here. I'm going to hit Control D. And I can just go through, maybe I'll hit it again. There we go. And it looks like I might have two sets of teeth. Hold on. Alright, so now we're back. Yeah, what happened was on my original geometry, somehow I still had the teeth and objects from there. So just deleted those and then we're good. So now that we have the teeth here, the gums are going to be modified. You can see they don't really look like gums. But I do want to do some stuff to the teeth. So what I can do is come over here to my alpha. And I'm going to choose something that has like scratches like this. I like the scratches. And I'll do the freehand. And just want to rough up the teeth a little bit. Maybe another division on them. Control D. Okay. I could also switch this to the move tool. Make my brush a bit bigger. And I could kind of pull some of these teeth out. Okay, if I decided I wanted to add a little bit more shape to them, I could do that too. So the process is pretty much the same thing that we've done for the rest of the character. It's just a matter of now just going through and shaping things the way we want. So I'm going to add a little bit of kind of gangly teeth to this. And I'm going to add that same little scratches to it also. Some of those scratches I think I may even just do it on texture and not on the geometry itself. Yeah, that's cool. Alright. I'm going to switch back to my... Actually, I'll switch to the clay buildup. Let's see what that looks like. It doesn't hurt to test this stuff out just to see. Go the other way, so I'm going to hold Alt and drag it. A little bit less intensity. There we go. See, so now the tooth has kind of this, pattern of scratches on it, from eating hard things that he shouldn't be eating. Lots of candy, probably. I don't have symmetry on for this. I obviously could have symmetry on. The hotkey is X, so I could just tap X. But something this simple, just kind of like going in there and roughing up the teeth, not a huge deal just to kind of go through and do it manually. Especially if I zoom out just a touch, I can kind of hit this side, hit that side. Okay, and the thing with this is just making it not look very pretty, and that's what we want. You know, he's a rough dragon. I could add more detail to this, but I don't want to add too much resolution to the teeth. You know, they're important things, but they're not like the most important thing. I'd rather spend my polygons on the dinosaur or dragon itself. I could also make our brush smaller and add some finer detail to some of these. You know, you don't want to spend like a whole bunch of fine detail in one area, a whole bunch of big detail in another area, but it's pretty consistent across, so I'm pretty safe in doing it like this. And his front teeth are probably be more important than obviously the sides because they're kind of like the stars of the show as far as the teeth go. See, I went with too big of a brush there and it looks ridiculous. There we go. That's too deep. Too big of a brush. There you go. Okay, so now I've added, you know, it's pretty substantial when we get back here. We'll be able to see some of that detail in those. So that's pretty much it I do for the teeth. The next part is the gums. So I'm going to go to the gums, reordering them down, and then do the same thing. We'll just subdivide it a couple times. So 44,000 is where mine are at right now. And I am going to turn on symmetry for this, so I just hit X. And we can verify it just by seeing that. And I'm just going to go through Let's start back here on the bottom. And I'm going to hold down, or go to the clay brush, turn this back to the square alpha. I think I need another subdivision, so I'll hit Control D, make my brush a little bit bigger, a little bit more Z intensity here. And you'll see how I'm just kind of building up this spot where the tooth would be, and then pulling it down. If you look at a picture of gums and teeth, a good illustration, you can see how it's kind of like a pocket. Okay, and then out here, that's disgusting. That should be okay. Out here, we basically have the tooth is going into this, so there's like this bulge at each area. So that's what I'm trying to capture here. It's just this bulge that would be out on this side. So a little pocket, little bulge. Okay, then I can go back and smooth it out. Oops. My Z intensity is up too far for that. Sometimes when you reset ZBrush, the Z intensity pops back up. And if it makes it easier, I can turn off the dragon so I don't see him. A little bit further down. And so this is just the same process for all of these. I'm going to make sure that I, have a good bed here. I don't want it to get kind of loose like it's doing right there, so I'll switch to the move tool at some point. And just hold these points over. And then smooth that out. And if I need to, I can switch down to another subdivision level and smooth it. Or switch down and move it over. And then switch back to my higher res. And continue with my clay buildup tool. Okay, so I'm going to pause the video for this, and then we'll come back when it's done. Alright, so I have the gums done, and if we look at the gums, you can see they definitely look like there's some sort of bone sticking inside of each one of these little areas here. I did have to move some of them. Some of my teeth were actually, not touching the gums, so I would have to pull the gums down. Or I could have swapped to my teeth and pulled the teeth up. So you see here, these teeth may not be in the right position. Well, I could pull the gums back this way or swap to the teeth and pull the teeth out to fit the cavity. Okay, so it doesn't really matter which one you do as long as it doesn't look weird. We want to fit this into like a weird square shape or anything. Alright, so that's the gums. Let's see where the dragon was at. Okay, we're not going to do any sculpting in the eye itself, in the eyeball. That's just kind of a placeholder just to let us know where the eye is going to be at. Alright, so for the most part our sculpting of this is done. Okay, we didn't go into too much detail on a lot of these. We could spend a lot more time playing around with the detail of all of these different areas, but for now I think we're good. We're going to save this as number 4. And now we're at the texturing part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to switch this here, okay? And again, we just start with one thing, we work our way around. So I'm going to start with the gums, because that'll probably be the easiest one to color first. So I switch my material, and there's all these different materials. So when I click on one of these, like chrome, you'll see that he just turns this chromy reflective color, which kind of looks neat, but obviously not dragon. So I want to find something that kind of matches what that would look like. These are the matte cap, which are the ZBrush materials. These ones down here are just basic, typical materials. Here's reflected, here's normals, here's a regular blend, toy plastic. Okay, so toy plastic actually gives us this kind of like wet look, which is what I want the gums to have anyway, so I'm just going to go with that. Give me a better preview. And my color down here is, let's say, red. Let's start with that. And you'll see how everything turns red. Okay. Now, it's showing everything as red, but I'm only on this layer. But you can also see as I hover my mouse over that this is still that previous color we were at. Okay. I have to commit these materials to this object. So I go under, make sure I'm on this gums layer. I go under color, and I say fill object. Okay. Now before I click that, if I don't have anything else clicked, it's going to fill it with just whatever is up here. So right now it's filling it with just the color of RGB. So it'll keep the old material, but fill this color all over that material. So I have to make sure it's set to mRGB, which is the material and the RGB. Then I go to color, then I say fill object, and now you'll see that when you come over here that this is red. The other parts are still that default color, which is fine, that's what we want. If I switch my material now though, you'll see that white. The gums stay their original color, but the rest of it is changing. Okay, so that's fine, we can let it change color. So we're going to work on the gums first, then we'll get to the other stuff. I'm going to just switch this back to that toy plastic, and I'll leave it as whatever color I pick here is going to change everything. So I'm going to go to, let's look at gums. If you look at the gums, they're actually kind of pinkish, not really red. Those ones are, but these ones seem healthier. So let's go with something like that. We can even look up, dragon. Dragon gum. Dragon teeth. And you'll see like this guy, his is actually like really creamy colored. Even closer to, something like that. Okay, so I'm going to turn off the teeth, I'm going to turn off the dragon, turn off the eyeballs, and I just paint. Okay, now right now I'm on move. and if I click and drag, you'll see that I'm actually moving this. I don't want that. Okay, so I'm going to switch to the standard brush, and I'm going to switch the Z add off. Okay, the Z add is our sculpting, so now I'm not sculpting, I'm not doing anything because all these buttons are off. And I'm going to switch this to RGB, because I'm painting just this color. And now you'll see that I can paint just that color. I also have this alpha coming in, so I can also go to, I think that one would be good, this alpha here, and it'll just give me a texture. I also have this RGB intensity, I can pull that down. Okay, I can also change my freehand to spray or color spray. You see how we get different effects. Now we're actually getting some sort of texture on there, which is what we want. We're not looking at just getting a flat color, because then we could just do that inside Maya. We actually want to have some sort of texture to this. So you'll see I started off with that red base, but then I'm going through and just coloring it with this creamier color to give us more of that gums look. Okay, we can turn symmetry off at any point too, and do some individual stuff, but for the gums it's not even worth it. Alright, so that looks pretty good. We can go through to, let's see, we can go with a darker red color like this, kind of small, and I can also feather this out. That's what this guy is. So if I go to the right, it's going to be a softer brush. If I go to the left, it's going to be a harder brush. So I'm just keeping this nice and soft. It's probably too soft. Let me take this intensity up more. Let me take this off of color spray and just do freehand. There we go. So I'm just darkening the bottom of this. It'll just help kind of seal in that there's some sort of shadow. It's kind of like just like a gradation from the top down to give us, again, just another level of coloring to this. Now, the resolution on this texture is based on how many points we have. So if I needed more resolution, I would have to add more points to this. Alright, so that looks pretty good for gums. We're going to add some other stuff too inside of Maya that can tweak that. Now there are some, if we click on this divider here, there are some modifiers here that we can adjust, but I typically don't even bother with them inside of ZBrush. We're going to play with it inside of Maya to do all that. Alright, so the gums are done, so that's cool. So now I can go to the teeth, and I'll scoot those down, and turn the gums off. We'll find a good material for the teeth. And these materials are just for us to see inside of ZBrush. That's all they are. Let's make them white. There we go. Sometimes you have to move the screen to see it. I'm actually going to go with kind of this like yellowy color. There you go. So Dragon doesn't brush his teeth, so he wouldn't have sparkling white teeth. Alright, that looks good. So I'm just going to go to my color again. Oops. Make sure I'm on mRGB, because I want to seal both of those. Color, fill object. It fills that one. And then I can just come through and just start painting. So I'm going to go in with my RGB. And you can see that I didn't really fill it with white. I filled it with this like gray color. Because my RGB intensity is so low, I need to up that, then fill it. There we go. Then I can knock this back down and start adding some other color variations inside here. So now I've just added a bit of a darker color into this to, again, just kind of give it some more coloration to it. And all these little levels of detail that we add to our character will just help add to the realism of it. If you look at any kind of person, there's lots of detail happening all over them. Now I'm just going back and forth across the bottoms of the teeth. That's all I'm doing here. Just trying to darken the bottoms of the teeth. Oops. So the tops stay a little bit brighter. I'm going to tint them with a little bit of red. If our dragon is a meat eater, most likely his teeth would have, you know, bits of blood on it or something. Oops, I did turn my symmetry off on accident, so that's why this side is not colored yet. But had I left my symmetry on, I would have been painting on this side as well. Okay, and then we also have the insides to do. Oops. As I'm doing this, I'm trying to think. I don't believe we ever laid out our UVs for our teeth. I can check that just by going up to Z plugin, UV master, and I have to go to my lowest level, and then this flatten will open. So I'm just going to hit Shifty, Shifty, Shifty until I get there. Then I can go to Z plugin, and there are no UVs. Okay, so it's not a big deal because with ZBrush I can just say unwrap all. Oops, sorry, not unwrap all. Just unwrap. There we go. I don't want to unwrap my dragon or unwrap my other stuff because I already laid those out. So now if I go to Z plugin and I say flatten, it wants me to copy it first. So I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to say flatten. Sorry, not copy it. Where's clone, clone, clone? Work on clone. Right there. So I'm working on a clone, then I can flatten it and see the UVs all laid out nice and neat. That's good. Then I can say unflatten, and then I can say copy UVs, go back to my original one, Z plugin, paste UVs. You're already there anyway, so I could just swap to it. Alright, so the important thing in this step was that we just went to unwrap it. If we do this, it'll do it for all visible subtools, but everything else is hidden anyway, so it wouldn't have mattered. Alright, so he's good. So now I can just switch back to my levels and just continue painting with my darker color. And here's how you can color pick too. If you just drag this swatch to one of these colors, automatically color pick for you. Okay, so even if we're still painting this, you can see how we can go through and lay out the UVs, and ZBrush just kind of takes care of it for us. Because as we're painting at this stage, we're not even really painting on the UVs, we're painting on the vertices. And then when we go into something like Maya, that's when it's converting it into a UV base. Okay, the tablet will really help this too, being able to kind of soften this even more. Oops. It's a little bit off when I made that stroke, so it started spinning me around. Alright, there we go. It should be good. reorient myself. Good. Okay, now I could stop there, but like I said, I wanted to add a little bit more level of detail to this. So I'm going to switch to kind of a dark red color, like this blacky color, and I'm going to switch my brush to, I'll try this one and see how it looks. That's good. So you can see how it looks like it's just kind of like staining the tooth a bit. I'm not going to do it to all of them. I think just these front long ones would be the ones that would take majority of that blood staining. Now, if you're doing something like, as an example, a shark, sharks lose their teeth all the time, so those ones, their teeth may not be as stained unless you're doing something where it's like, an active kill, I guess. I'll do a little bit of, come on. Just gotta be a little bit carefuler when selecting these. A little bit. See, I don't want to go across because then it's going to stripe it like that. So I'm doing a little bit of red on these front ones, just a touch. Okay, and these guys down here would have, again, a majority of their tip is tainted with that red. Those are like the cutters, the first ones that go in there and slice it up. It's already established in my dragon as a meat eater. I am working upside down now, so that's why the top teeth I'm painting again, because I'm upside down. There we go. Now if we were getting really close to the teeth, I would do more work to them, but I think that's going to be good, just giving them some coloration. I think I will go through with some of this really low intensity, just kind of hit the other teeth with a little bit of that red. Okay, I can turn symmetry on. And that's too much. There you go. So now they just have like kind of like a hint of that red color. Won't be too graphic. Alright, that should be good. Okay, so now teeth are done. The eyes we're not doing anything with inside of Maya, or inside of ZBrush. We'll do that inside Maya. So now we're working the dragon body. And his UV should be all set. Okay, now again, we can verify this. If we go to the Z plugin and oops, come on, and flatten, it's going to say we need to copy it out. So I'm going to go to my lowest subdivision level. Yes. Work on a clone. This makes a new document. We flatten it, and we can see that he's laid out in these three sections just like we had before. Okay. So unflatten. And I can just click back on this one. I don't need to do any copying because we didn't do anything. Let's switch our material. So our dragon, what material do we want to start off with? These ones up here are kind of like, this is a skeleton one, so if you had bones, they could use that. But these are sculpt ones, so they look more skin-like. They have some waxiness to them. These ones are like the matte cap skin ones, so you could use that too. Again, these are just kind of like preview. I like to start off with, I think, that one. I mean, it's skin. So dragon is made of skin. He has his scales and whatever. But this will be a good start. Okay, so I went up to my top subdivision level, and I can get a lot of detail in here because he has so many divisions. So I'm going to go to MRGB. I'm going to go to color, fill object. Make sure this intensity is up all the way, just to make sure. There we go. Now I can pull the intensity down, and now I can just go in there and start coloring this. Now you'll see that my color was white as I was painting, or as I filled it. So as I go to red and I start painting red on here, it's not going to be like a full-blown red. Okay, this color is not really going to match this because there's some modifiers going into that. All right, so I'm just going to lower this down and just start painting. I think in this case I'm going to go with more of a, no, actually I'm going to go with red. This is like my base color for the dragon, so I think blue might be a neat color. Now you can probably get lots of reference from movies like How to Train Your Dragon or Game of Thrones. There's actually a movie with Matthew McConaughey where they were fighting dragons. I can't think of the name of it. I think it was Matthew McConaughey. Okay, so I'm leaving a little bit of that beige kind of poking through because I don't want to fully cover it with the blue. And in some of these areas I'm going a little bit lighter with the blue than other areas. There we go. So I'm going to take this now and just darken it. And I could also, if I'm trying to blend colors, hold Shift and just click and drag. And that's my smoother. So just like your smoothing brush when we're sculpting, I can smooth the colors to blend them in. Take this alpha off. Just make it that. I like to go with a lighter color on the belly, so I'm just going to lighten this color up. Pull in some of this darker color here just to fill in this area here for that light spot. Alright, so it's looking pretty good so far. I'm going to save these horns for last because I want to spend a little bit more time on those. I could mix in another color like some orange. Maybe around his eyes he has this kind of orangey color. Switch back to the blue. And the cool thing is that we can just keep going over and over this till we get the color, you know, the exact color we want. And this is a lot more simple than trying to go into Maya and trying to, find a good color or paint the color inside Maya, which is, something we used to have to do. Alright, go into here now and just kind of fill in some of this area, smooth it out some. Let me step back from him before I start working on the horns. I think I'm going to add a little bit more gold into the snout area. There we go. Now I could also do stuff like this, like I can go in with a dark red, and standard brush is fine. I'm going to do a drag. I'm going to change this to that. Okay. And that color really need to darken that a bit more. So I can do stuff like this where I just go in and drag a little bit darker. There you go. So now he has this like little scar on the side of him. Now he does have it on both sides because I had symmetry on, so I could just hit undo, turn symmetry off, and then re-draw that in there. Okay. I could also draw stuff like little ribs inside here. So I'm turning symmetry back on. Turn the damn standard brush on. I'm going to switch this to RGB because every time we switch a brush, it'll change it. Okay, so now we go into here. Let's make sure when you go into smooth, somehow mine got clicked back on, turn that off. So I'm in the damn standard. Oops. Take my intensity down. Not with red, I want to go with a darker version of this color here. So I can just add some lines in there, just kind of as an indicator of some sort of pattern happening on him. Okay, for this guy I really don't need the pattern, I just wanted to show it to you. Alright, now also if we decide, you know what, maybe we've lost some of our texture a little bit, which I did because I think I was on, when I was smoothing I was on Z-add. I could at any time just go back to my standard brush, change this back to that pattern, there it is. Take the RGB off, change this back to add, and just start adding in that texture again. And you can see how I can just go back and forth to do the sculpting and painting, sculpting and painting. I have my symmetry on, which is good. Okay, so even if you accidentally, make a mistake like I did, because you're not perfect either, no big deal, just go back and just start adding in that detail again. Should make sure that we turn that Z add off if we do any more smoothing on our coloring. Okay, and this was another little trick. It just went to that color spray, and as long as I had a soft enough Z intensity, and my draw size was small enough, I could fill in some of these little gaps. With just some grain. It's basically just like a grainy texture. If we were getting even closer to our dragon than what we are doing, we could have this even be more divisions up here, which would give this higher resolution. But just so we don't have any flat areas, that's what the goal of this step is. To make it look like he has texture all over him. Okay, and we're painting the texture, so we have lots of room to kind of go through and do exactly what we want where we want without having to worry about adding polygons, uh, extruding in the correct spot or any of that stuff. It's just a matter of painting. It's a matter of sculpting, grabbing a brush and just doing what we want it to look like. There we go. And if I wanted to add some more of these drag rectangle areas, I could do that. Just take my intensity up a bit. See how easy it is just to, again, add more detail at any point in this. And that's the goal, right, is to be able to customize it along the way. I like to add, smaller ones and bigger ones and transition between them. So I don't like to just have like a huge one right here that doesn't make sense to me. There we go. So he's looking pretty good. So now I'm going to paint the horns here. So I'm going to go back to my standard brush. Turn that back to alpha here. Turn this back to freehand. Z add is off. RGB is on. And if I hold shift, you can see that the Z add is also off. Okay, so I can verify that as I go. Alright. So now, if we go in here to white, so I want these things to be pretty white or creamy. Here we go. And yep, everything's good. I'm just going to start painting white on the horns here. And you'll see that we're not really getting anything, away from what we had. So I'm going to switch my material to a bony material, so that this white here. Okay. Now as I paint mRGB, it's actually painting that new material on top of these bones. Okay, so we're actually getting like two materials basically. And you can see how just painting those faces inside there. So we don't get as much softness as we would otherwise. Okay, so doesn't look as good as I thought, so I'm going to hit undo. Okay. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a mask around each one of these horns. Okay, so I'm going to hold down Control, turn Z add off, and just paint. And this is painting a mask on these horns. That way when I paint it, I am getting exactly what I want. Okay, so I just hold Control to drag the mask, and if I want to subtract, I hold Control Alt, and I can just subtract from the mask. So I'm just checking out the other areas. Oops. I think instead of changing the material on this, I'm just going to paint the RGB. Okay. Now the stuff I masked was actually the opposite. Okay, so I want if I start painting, I'm painting on this guy. So I want to hold Control again and just click in the outer space. That swaps it. So now I can go in here, take this intensity up. Paint that. Maybe I'll paint it this creamier color. Okay, so I don't have to worry about accidentally painting on him because the mask is on, so I can just paint on that. And I can go with some darker strips, change this to that stripy one. Okay, so we want the mask to go away, we hold Control, and we just click and drag off into no man's land. Okay, now what if we want to get that back? Okay, we can't just get that back. So I'm going to hit undo again just to show you another cool tool, which is polygroups, where I can just go here to polygroups and say group masked. Okay, now what it did is if I come over here and hit this polyframe, you'll see that I have two different colors on him now. I have this blue color and I have the purple color. So if I want to, I'm going to hold Control and just drag off, and that gets rid of my mask. If I want to reselect the horns, I can hit Control Shift and click on the horns, and you see how the horns get isolated. Okay, Control Shift click, and they're back. Control Shift click on the dragon, and now I just have the dragon. Control Shift click off the dragon, and now the horns are back. Okay, so polygroups are a very powerful tool, allowing you to create basically selection sets. Okay, all the pieces we had for our dragon, the teeth, the gums, all that, we could have done via polygroups as well, but it's just easier to do it with subtools. Okay, so I'm going to turn the polyframe off just so we don't see that coloring. Okay, and typically what I'll do is I'll turn my I already need the polyframe on. So if I just Control Shift click this, then I can hit Control, marquee a box, Control Shift click. See how they're masked? I can still see both. And then I can just Control click to switch between them. Okay, so right now I'm just going to Control click on this, going with the dark color here, and just paint. Along these edges. Just so I have some sort of transition where these two pieces are coming together. Okay, and this is, as far as what we're going to render, this is how far away we're going to be. Just about that far. Okay, so he's looking pretty good from that distance. Alright, so Control drag, take it off of our mask. And just Control click that again. I'm going to add a little bit of transition to him too, to the horns as well. So adding some darker color right here at the base. Let me take the stroke off, or just fuzz it some. Alright, hold Shift. Just kind of blend that in. Oops. I'm going to take the mask off first. And take my RGB intensity down. And I can blend that together a little bit nicer. There we go. So that'll look pretty nice from this far away. We get this nice little thing there. Now we could also come down here to masking, there it is, and we can create a mask other ways than just kind of painting it. So I'm going to do mask by cavity, and I'm just going to hit mask by cavity. And what this is going to do is look at our surface and find any dips and create a mask. So as we zoom in, you can see here's the mask, is all of these little crevices that we've created. So the cool thing about this is that I can take that, go in with, let's say, a little brighter gold brush, and then just paint. Right, just something subtle like that. That's too subtle or too drastic. I'm just adding a little bit of a sheen basically to all of those spots. Okay, and if I look at it, you can see how the surfaces of these are painted with that gold color, but the crevices are still dark. Okay, which is kind of neat. I'm going to hit undo. I actually don't like the way that turned out. I'm going to change some of my stuff here. I'm going to go to cavity profile. It might be kind of hard to see, but I'm just adjusting how this cavity profile is shaped. So I'm going to go to something like this, erase my mask, and make another one. Well, let's take the intensity down. Maybe we'll add a little blur to it. Let's try that. That's a little bit better. I'm actually going to reverse it. We'll try that too. So I just control clicked to reverse it. Then I can go in with a darker color and just paint that darker color all over. And what that does again is just darken those areas. So now you see how I have more of this texture kind of popping out because of it. And that's all linked to the texture itself. So I click the button again just to get the mask again. I'm going to control click. And just start painting on the face somewhere I didn't paint anything on the face. It's a little bit too messy. There you go. So that just helps kind of punch up that texture some. So when we're back here, we can really see those lines. That's the goal of that. Okay. But it's all in texture, so just helping that stuff kind of pop out a little bit more. All right, so that's it as far as painting. You can go further and paint more stuff if you'd like, but as far as what I'm demonstrating, that's it. Okay, so the last stage of this before we go into Maya is to export all these things out. All right, so I'm going to save. We'll call this 5. And then I'm going to go through and export. All right, so I'm going to go to my subtools, and I'm going to export out all my subtools. So I'm going to start off with the dragon here. Okay, now if I export him out as is, he's going to export out 2 million polygons, which is not going to do us any good inside Maya. So I'm going to Shift D down to a reasonable number. Okay, and that reasonable number is just going to be looking at it, seeing where the cutoff is. Obviously the less we have, the better. So 2000 would be great, but we just don't have a whole lot of information here, and it actually looks a bit blocky. So to hit D, that looks all right. We're losing our ridges back here. Hit D again, we get the ridges back. Okay, so I think 37,000 is probably a good value. I can always come back and re-export it if I need to. So I'm just going to say export this. Format is going to be Maya Dragon from ZBrush _001. So there he goes. You'll see up here, file exported, time, whatever. I'll click on his teeth. We do the same process. What's the lowest we can go on the teeth? Okay, so let's go Shift D. Still looks good. Shift D. I think I'll export it not there. I'll export it at 9,000 polygons because I can always smooth it out inside Maya too. Export teeth from ZBrush _ 001. Let's go to the gums. I think there's my number right there, 44,000. Export gums from ZBrush _ 001. And I'll take the eyes also, just because sometimes the eyes don't line up nice when you bring it back in. Export eyes from ZBrush. I don't care about the resolution here because I haven't changed it. There we go. Alright, so that's all of the pieces of geometry. Okay, so now I'm going to go into the gums here, and go up to the high res, go up to the teeth, high res, go up to the dragon, high res, and then we're going to export out the textures. Okay, so I'm going to go to Z plugin, I believe that's French. I'm going to go to the multi-map exporter, and we're going to export out some maps. We don't need displacement or vector displacement. You could export these out, but what these are is basically all of these areas that we would have these bumps, it would actually export it out. So for yours, I would say don't export the displacement. I'm going to export it just so you can see what it does. Vector displacement is something different. It's more advanced. We'll export the normal map, we'll export the texture, ambient, cavity. We already exported the mesh, so we don't need that. Oops. The size of each map, I'm going to export it at 2048. Just so we don't kill our systems, okay? And I have flip V also checked. And create all maps. Now I can also do subtools, and that'll do all of them, so that'll even save me a little bit more time. Create all maps. I'm just going to make sure I put it into my source images. I'm going to make a new folder called ZBrush Textures, and then just save it inside here. There's actually some weird characters inside there. I don't know where those came from. And then save. And now what this is going to do is, you can see up here, switching to subtool 1, 2, and whatever. And then it's exporting all those out. And so once they're exported, then we can bring these into Maya. But well, I'll wait for them to export, and then we'll look at them. And then the next video will be bringing them into Maya and finishing up the scene. Alright, so all maps exported, time taken 3 minutes 32 seconds. So I'm just going to jump into Photoshop and do desktop, D drive, work, Dragon, source images, ZBrush textures. Holy cow. And we'll see, it still left that weird character on them. Hopefully it doesn't do that for yours. I don't know what it is, just annoying. We have a bunch of textures here, and they're all about 12 megabytes each at the most. If we exported them at 4096, they would be much, much bigger. So I'm just going to open these up so we can see them. Okay, so these ones are the teeth. You can see the teeth here, and you can see the blood that we have on those. Here's the teeth normal map. So this is actually how bumpy the teeth are, so the bump mapping. This is the displacement map. This is the cavity map, and this is the ambient occlusion. Okay, so we'll play with these next time. Here's the teeth again. Here's the dragon. Remember, we have 3 parts of the dragon. We have the UVs separated differently. So here are all the 3 different pieces of the dragon's body. Alright, and if we decided we didn't like blue, or the director didn't like blue, we could come in here to our hue and saturation. And I could change the coloration out, so I can make him purple, I can make him green, I could pull the saturation back, I could, do any number of items to this, and then just copy whatever settings I have and apply it to my other files as well. Okay, here's the other one. Here's his horns up here, you can see right there. Here's his normal maps for each one of those. Here's the dragon body displacement maps. I'm going to close these as I go, so I can see the next one. Here is his displacement map for that, displacement map for that. Here's his cavity map. Okay. Now a lot of these, if we're seeing that we really need to have more detail in this, or we really can't see the scales, we can always come back to ZBrush and just re-export those out at a higher res. Okay. But I think overall they look pretty good. Here's the ambient occlusion for probably the eye. This is a dragon body. That's probably no ambient occlusion. So that's it. Okay. So those are our maps, and next time we'll go through, like I said, and bring this stuff into Maya and start putting this together. Now we'll have to go through Photoshop and start tweaking some stuff eventually, or Nuke. I like to do it inside Nuke. But we will be tweaking some things. Okay, so I'm going to leave you at that, and next time, like I said, we'll go through the Maya stuff.